Okay, today we're learning about intercepts on a graph. I know I've got this when I can identify intercepts of a graph, graph a linear equation by finding and plotting the intercepts, and identify and graph vertical and horizontal lines. The key vocabulary is y-intercept, x-intercept, vertical line, and horizontal line. All right, so in this one, we are going to find the x and the y-intercepts. So when it asks you that, it's wanting to know where the x and the y-intercepts on the graph. This is where it's touching the x-intercept. So this point right here would be -1, 0. And this point, your x is 0 and your y is 4. On this one, there are no x-intercepts because nothing is on that x-axis, and your y-intercept is where x is 0 and y is -2. Okay, so you're going to identify the graphs, the intercepts. So go ahead and pause it. And there are your answers. So how'd you do? Let me know if you need help with that. Finding the x and the y-intercepts in an equation. So to find the x-intercept, you let y equal 0. And to find the y-intercept, you let x equal 0. So let's do these. We're going to graph 4 equals x plus 3y by finding and plotting the intercepts. Okay, so I am going to say 4 equals x minus 3 times 0 for the first one. So when I do that, x is actually going to equal 4, so I can plot that right there. And then to find the y, I'm going to let x equal 0. So if I divide the 3, I get y equals -4/3, which is also -1 1/3 to plot. So just estimate that it's about right there. And then to draw it, to graph it, you just connect the lines. And then you can see their graph, it looks very similar. Okay, now we're going to do this one. So graph this by plotting the intercepts. What you'll notice is if I let x equal 0, y will be 0. And if I let y equal 0, then x is also going to equal 0. So the x and the y-intercepts in both of those are the origin. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to put in other points because that one point is not enough. Okay, so I'm going to just say let x equal -3 and +3. So if I do that, if x equals -3, y would equal -6. And if x equals +3, y would equal +6. So let's plot those points. So -3, -6, and +3, +6. And then you just connect the dots with a line as straight as possible. And see, the graphs matched up pretty well. So there you go. Okay, graph. So this is for you to do. So graph by plotting the intercepts. Go ahead and pause. So your intercepts are 0, -3, and -4, 0. And so if we graph that 0, -3, and I'm sorry, that's not right. 0, -3, and -4, 0. And so if you plotted that line, it would look like that. Okay, so now we're gonna let you do this one also. Go ahead, pause it. And so the intercepts should be at 0, 4, and -2, 0. And so that line should look like this. Now we're going to graph vertical and horizontal lines. So if you're graphing x equals -3, you go to where x equals -3 and you graph a vertical line. Because x doesn't just equal -3 right here, it equals it all the way up and all the way down. And y equals 3, you go to where y equals 3 and you graph it straight across. Because again, y doesn't just equal 3 here, it equals it everywhere. Okay, go ahead and pause this and get you some extra practice in by plotting the intercepts. And then here are 3 more. Identify the type of equation, vertical or horizontal, and graph the equation. So A would be a vertical line at -3. So you would go to where x equals -3, 1, 2, 3, and draw a vertical line. Y equals 2 would be a horizontal line at y equals 2. And if I solve this, I get x equals 2, which 1, 2 would be a vertical line where x equals 2. So I know I've got this when I can identify the intercepts of a graph, graph a linear equation by finding and plotting the intercepts, and identify the graph and identify and graph vertical and horizontal lines. Do you really understand? Explain how to find the x and the y intercepts. Explain how to find the x and the y intercepts of the graph and the equation, and then find the intercepts. So you would plug a 0 in for x and a 0 in for y and find both of them, and then find the intercepts. So you would get 2 and 0 and 0 and -8. Give an example of a linear equation whose graph is a horizontal line and state the intercept. An example would be where y equals 5 and the intercept would be 0, 5, because let's see, it wants a horizontal line. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If we did that, it looked like this. And the point would be 0, 5.